Caffeine intake and invisible illness. You might be someone who drinks it regularly and don't know whether it's impacting your invisible illness. You might be drinking it and experiencing crashes, or you might be completely addicted to it and don't notice any health implications whatsoever. Today are some strategies in regards to how to manage caffeine intake and our invisible illness. So first of all, it's a mild diuretic, which means that it can have dehydrating effects. Now with this, in what I'd say like a non-invisible illness individual, they may not notice that, but for someone with an invisible illness, specifically a dysautonomia profile, they are going to notice that. So I always say 1 for 1. So every time we have caffeine intake, pairing that with a hydrating fluid like your water or your electrolytes or something like that, so that we're not dehydrating throughout the day. Caffeine itself, especially from coffee, but more so teas, they can stack up and they can build in our system over time. So it's really important to recognize, when did we last have caffeine and is it too soon? Because we might still be in that window before it's coming back down. It's really important to recognize that it's an appetite suppressant. So it is not a snack, it is not a meal, it is not food. It should complement all of those things. So making sure that you have, generally I suggest people to eat before they have their caffeine, in whatever form they're having it, so that they're able to have food into their body. So the biggest thing is that, caffeine is not energy. It is often a misconception there. What caffeine does is turn down the volume of tiredness, rather than energy in system. So it's not, unlike food, it's not giving you energy, it's not giving you that side of it, it's actually turning down tiredness, which I say in quotes because that's not necessarily the side effect we get from caffeine in invisible illness. So it's very important to be aware of what has caffeine and how much, just to understand how much we're actually having in our day, because sometimes it's just a mindless thing to go make a cup of tea, and all of a sudden we've had over 400 milligrams of caffeine in the day. Everyone has a different tolerance. Some people are super sensitive, some people are not, but it's understanding the impact that caffeine may be having on your invisible illness, and how to pace around that. Another thing to consider is that caffeine is something that activates the sympathetic nervous system, and we often talk about that being overstimulated and engaged and dominant in invisible illnesses. So keep in mind that it is something that encourages sympathetic activation, which is, it has its time and its place and can be really effective. But this is why it can go hand in hand with things like feeling wired or stimulated, faster heart rate or palpitations, restlessness or agitation, or feeling unable to sit or engage with relaxation or restoration, because our body might feel a little jittery, which is why some people can feel like caffeine makes them anxious, or some people feel that caffeine can exacerbate their dysautonomia profiles, because it has very similar symptom profile and impact on sympathetic dominance. Other things to consider is that it is a vasoconstriction. So that is something that is a good thing in dysautonomia, which is why it might be part of our daily kind of needs around. We might often pace our caffeine intake with the vasoconstriction from a symptom perspective. Not everyone, it's not as effective as things like your compression or other strategies around vasoconstriction, but it is something to keep in mind. So with this, it's important to understand what our dosage and management of caffeine can be, and timings in the day. So how closely they may be together, what time of day in general. And the one thing that most people can agree upon when it comes to caffeine is that you should minimize it 6 to 8 hours before bed. So just because you don't necessarily feel like it impacts your ability to fall asleep or stay asleep, it can directly impact the quality of your sleep. And in invisible illness, that is already compromised. So we want to minimize anything that does that. So it's looking at timings around your caffeine intake, dosage around your caffeine intake, as well as your symptoms, and picking your timing wisely in the sense of how you're already feeling and whether your body can tolerate a sympathetic dominant activity such as caffeine, or whether your body needs something that's going to encourage engagement with parasympathetic activity comparatively. So I hope this makes sense. And pretty much it's just that concept of thinking about how that may be impacting your health and what you can do around it to create more safety around minimizing symptom experience, but also minimizing those smaller boom and busts that we can experience in the day. So I hope you found this helpful. Bye.